Hey everyone, I'm just going completely off the cuff here, no script or anything, but I wanted to talk to people. You know, I wanted to say I've been looking at comments and I've been looking at messages that people post, and I see a lot of people in pain in this group. And I want to say, you know what? I get it. It's tough. It's tough having a spouse that is not giving you the kind of attention that you'd like. And it's tough not receiving the love that you want. And it's tough not getting the respect that you deserve. The big question, though, that I want to ask people is, what are you going to do about it? You see, in a lot of these situations, it's easy. It's easy to point the finger at your spouse. It's easy to say, okay, well, they're they're the one that's being mean, and they're the one that's not giving me respect, and so the ball's in their court. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, this applies to relationships, but this applies to many other situations also. That if you wait for someone else to change, if you're putting the ball in someone else's court, it's not going to work out for you. You're playing the victim in these cases. And being the victim doesn't lead to change. Like I said, though, I get it. It's difficult, and it's really hard to actually figure out, okay, where do we go from here? How do I actually affect the situation? Because you might have said, okay, I've tried being understanding, I've tried being caring, and I've tried giving love, and I'm still not getting what I want. And in those cases, it's not about how, you've done everything. Even though you've done everything that you think is possible, it still means that there's something else out there. I'm gonna give a story here, or an example that kind of speaks about this now, and give some analogies afterwards. So my business partner, Heather, is an amazing person, right? Years ago, she went through something really, really terrible. She was pregnant and had cancer and wanted to keep the child. In this situation, this really affected her marriage, and it affected her relationship with her husband, it affected her kids, it affected her. And yet, it would have been easy for her husband to say, okay, this is your problem, you need to do something to fix it. But of course, in this situation, that would have been cold or heartless for her husband to say, okay, you've got cancer, this is really changing things up, to really come down on her. She was struggling, and he lifted her up. In many ways, your marriages are very similar. There's struggles in the marriage. Maybe your husband is struggling with knowing how to show respect and sharing his emotion. And maybe it's your wife who's really struggling on how to give you the love that you need, or how to really support you. And we can do the same thing. We can say, okay, it's their duty, it's their responsibility to know these things. It's their responsibility to know how to help me or support me. And like I said before, we can say that, but it doesn't really lead to what you want. Or we can support them and help them to know how to support you, how to give you the love that you need, or to give you the respect that you deserve. If this were a business situation, for example, it would be a little bit ridiculous of me if I were to say, okay, I'm struggling in my business here, and it must be my customers. My customers don't know what's good for them. They don't know that my product is amazing, or that they should come to my store. So I'm just going to wait for them to change, and then business will turn on. You wouldn't do that in a business. And similarly, you know, in other situations, you know, like if it were your kids, if your kids were showing you disrespect or weren't following the rules, you wouldn't say, okay, you know, they're not giving me the respect I deserve, so I'm going to wait for them to change, and I'm going to see what happens. No, you would support them. People kind of have this assumption that, okay, if I've been married for this many years, then my husband or my wife, they should know me well enough to know what pleases me and what makes me happy, and I should know the same for them. But that's not always the case. People change over the years. Circumstances change. You have more kids. Those kids grow up and move on. People start to grow. And there can be a real disconnect. And we can say, okay, well, since my husband or my wife isn't changing and they're not pleasing me anymore, it must be because they're doing something wrong. When really, there's things that you can do to bring the two of you closer together. Now, I'm not saying, hey, you haven't been trying hard enough, or hey, I'm not saying anything like that. What I am saying is, I'd like you to move away from the mentality that it's your husband or your wife, they need to change, and if they can't change, nothing will happen. And get into the mindset that if you want your marriage to be better, then it's up to you to make that happen. And if you don't know how to make that happen, then it's time to get some help. So take charge of your marriage. Make sure that you're the one that's changing. If nothing is happening with all your efforts, examine yourself, and if things still aren't changing, get some advice. But there are things that you can do to get the change that you want, no matter the circumstance. Even if your spouse is heading out the door, there's things that you can do to make the circumstances better. If you have questions, please let us know. That's what we're here for.